Good evening to all. I am Dr. Kumaraguru, working as a conservation scientist on behalf of BCF, NGO based at Tamil Nadu in India, with the vision is visualizing society for promoting and assisting healthy coexistence of human and wildlife and ultimately ensuring conservation of biodiversity. So strategic implementation of this session draws us to handle research and reaching stakeholders in synchronized manner. Our research includes from ants to elephants, and exploring effective management practices in the perspective of biodiversity conservation. With our wide research expertise team, we are able to work from Nagapattinam to Valley of Flower Himalayas, stretching across different landscapes and different people and very dependency on the ecosystem. In nutshell, we connect nature with people, people with nature. So let's get connected today also in the virtual platform to existence and experience nature in enhanced dimension. Thank you all. Thank you for joining today BCF International Webinar.
Hello everybody, good evening. So my name is Vikramaditya. I am a postdoctoral research fellow in the Ashoka Trust for Research and Ecology, which is in Bangalore. So we've been working on the Indian pangolin for the past few years now. And I thought we'll share with you some of our findings and also some of the conservation threats that the species is facing. So on the left side, if you see the first image, that's the animal, that's the Indian pangolin. The second photo is of scale of the Indian pangolin. And the third photo is the landscape in which we've been working in the Eastern Ghats, Northern Eastern Ghats to be precise. We've been working mostly in Andhra, but also parts of Odisha and Chhattisgarh. So I'm not sure if many of you know about the pangolin, but pangolin is probably the most threatened animal in India right now, and as a group, they are very highly threatened because of wildlife trade. This is a pangolin that has been hunted in 2018 in, I believe it was West Bengal. This is actually a Chinese pangolin, I think, but you can see that it's covered by scales, and that is what makes it very special. This is the only mammal which is covered by scales. There are no other mammals which have scales on them. So that's the reason it looks a lot like a reptile to a lot of people. In fact, in the local languages across India and I believe across parts of Asia also, they are referred to as scaly anteaters or scaly fishes, something like that. And you can also see the size of the tongue. You can see the size of the tongue. The tongue is very long. The tongue is almost as long as the body of the animal. And that's another unique feature of this animal, because its long tongue it uses to eat ants and insects. This animal is an insectivore. It feeds mostly entirely only on ants and insects, ants and termites actually to be precise. So you can see that the entire body is adapted to that behavior. So it sticks the tongue into the ant hole or the termite burrow, and then the tongue is sticky. So the animals, so the ants and termites, they stick to the tongue, and then it pulls it back into the animal, and that's how it eats. The tongue of the animal is not rooted in the throat like human tongues. It's rooted in the stomach, in the gut, and that's why it's so long. And you can see that the front claws are very long. So it uses these claws to dig up the ants and the termite mounds, and that's how it finds them and eats them. However, these animals are under grave threat right now in the world. They are the most heavily trafficked animals in the world in illegal wildlife trade. So as a group, there are 8 species of pangolins around the world. I'll tell you about it a bit later. There are 4 species in Asia and 4 in Africa. So as a group, this is probably the most
Yeah, it's fine, Doctor. Little bit voice only, if possible, you can increase your volume in your system.
Okay, let me see. I'll try it for a minute or so. If it doesn't work, I'll try it like this.
Yeah.
So, however, all 8 species, like I was saying, are either endangered or critically endangered. So you can see how much of a threat this group is in. So it is very possible that in the next couple of decades, the animal might as well, all the 8 species of pangolins might as well go extinct. All of them are listed under the Appendix 1 of the CITES agreement. The CITES is an international agreement to control and regulate trade in wildlife. So there are about 190 countries which are member of this agreement. So in these 190 countries, all the species that are protected under this agreement, there is a restriction on trade, on legal trade in wildlife. So in India, we have two species of pangolins, the Indian pangolin and the Chinese pangolin. So just to show you how much decline these animals faced, the Indian pangolin was supposed to be least concern in 1996. But by the year 2014, it became listed as endangered by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. So this is the group which sort of does species assessments and gives a threat status to each species. So within a span of less than 20 years, the Indian pangolin has gone from least concern, which means least concern is, that means the species is not really in that much of a danger, to it became listed as endangered in 2014. So in a span of 20 years, there's been a massive decline in their numbers. So there are some reports which suggest that the Indian pangolin and pangolins around the world, particularly the Asian pangolins, they might have experienced up to 90% decline in their numbers. So this is a decline like no other species has faced. Perhaps vultures in India might have faced that level of decline in numbers. But among the mammals, probably the pangolins are the only ones which have declined so rapidly in numbers. Because of this, the Indian and Chinese pangolins, both of these species are found in India. They are protected under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of India. So under this act, no hunting or trade of this species is permitted, and it is a criminal offense to hunt or trade in the species. Yeah, like I said, it's listed under the Appendix 1 of CITES. So the CITES consists of about 4 appendices, I think. So 3 appendices are species which are regulated for trade. So the Appendix 1 means that the species, there are about 5,000 species which are listed in Appendix 1 of the CITES agreement. So no trade in these species are permitted. So these are protected under the CITES agreement. And India also is a member of this agreement. So it is not permitted to hunt or trade in pangolins, either within India or to send pangolins from India outside the country. But then you might ask, why is it being, why I am saying that it is the most trafficked species globally in illegal wildlife trade. So you can see that hunting and trade is completely banned both domestically in India as well as abroad. So the only reason the species is declining by such a fast rate is because of illegal wildlife trade. So there was a report released in 2018 by Traffic India. Traffic is an organization, it's an international organization which monitors trade in wildlife. And they released a report saying that between the year 2009 and 2017, so that approximately 9-year period, more or less 6,000 pangolins have been seized in India in being traded illegally. So that is a scale of trade which happens illegally in pangolins. So this amounts to about nearly 650 a year. So this is just to show you a comparative estimate. This is the CITES trade database. So this basically lists the number of trade incidents of all species that are protected under the agreement. So there were only 12 cases of pangolins being traded legally between the year 2000 and 2020. So in this 20-year period, there were only 12 cases of the Indian pangolin being traded legally. So most of these are either zoo specimens or there are the dead bodies sent for forensic examination or something like that. But they are not live caught animals. So you can see that only 12 are listed here. But then the traffic report says 6,000. So all of those 6,000 animals have been illegally hunted and traded. So just to show you the distribution of the pangolins in the world, there are 8 species, like I said. There are 4 species distributed in South, Southeast, and East Asia. And there are 4 other species distributed in Sub-Saharan Africa. The 4 Asian pangolins, the Indian pangolin, the Chinese pangolin, the Sunda or Malayan pangolin, and the Philippine pangolin. These 4 pangolins are all critically endangered or they are endangered. Only the Indian pangolin is endangered. The other three are critical. Whereas the 4 species of African pangolins, they're all endangered except I think the Cummings pangolin or the what does it say here? The ground pangolin, that is vulnerable. So as you can see, all the 8 species are in grave danger of becoming extinct in the next couple of decades. I hope you can see these maps. I'm not sure if they're very clear, but this is just to show you a more detailed distribution of how they are distributed. So the Indian pangolin is found across much of the Indian subcontinent, as well as parts of Bangladesh, parts of Pakistan, and in Sri Lanka. The Chinese pangolin is distributed across the Terai and the Himalayas in India, Nepal, and then it goes on till East Asia, and then as well as Taiwan. And also it's there in parts of Vietnam and Laos, as well as Bangladesh and Myanmar. Bangladesh is probably the only country which has 3 species of pangolins. It's got the Indian, Chinese, and the Sunda pangolin also. So Sunda pangolin is distributed from Bangladesh all the way to Indonesia, so across much of Southeast Asia. The Philippine pangolin is restricted to this one small island called Palawan in the Philippines. The 4 African pangolins are distributed across much of equatorial and tropical Africa, the white-bellied pangolin and the black-bellied pangolin. The Cummings pangolin is distributed across East Africa, South Africa, Southern Africa, as well as going up to Sudan. Whereas the giant ground pangolin is mostly restricted to the forests of equatorial Africa. So as a group, the African pangolins are not in that much danger as the Asian pangolins. And that's why the focus of wildlife trade has shifted from the Asian pangolins to the African pangolins now. And I'll talk about that a bit later. So in India, there's been an increase in interest in pangolins for obvious reasons for the past 3 to 4 years. After the traffic report came out, there's been a few articles that have been written. We also wrote a couple of articles on the danger of the pangolins in India going extinct. This paper that we wrote is coming out next month, in which we used camera traps and community knowledge to assess what is the status of the Indian pangolin in the landscape that I showed you earlier, the northern eastern Ghats where we are working. There's been quite a few papers done by a group in Bangladesh as well. So I also wanted to mention a little bit about the links to COVID-19 pandemic. So as many of you may have read, the pangolin has been linked to the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been a couple of papers which have been written. In fact, this was written in 2019 itself, the first paper on the left. Viral metagenomics revealed Sendai virus and coronavirus infection of Malayan pangolins. And these 3 papers came out during the pandemic. So basically, they conclude that pangolins do host coronaviruses and other species of viruses. They do say that it is likely that the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic, could have probably emerged from bats. So bats could probably have been the host animals for this SARS-CoV-2 virus before infecting humans. But they say that the infection did not happen directly from bats to humans. It probably jumped from bats to the Malayan pangolin, which was illegally traded into China. And it was kept in a wet market in Wuhan, in China. And that's where it emerged and it spilled over into humans. So these 4 papers came out, these 3 came out this year during the pandemic, and the first one came out, in fact, last year itself. So this does show, in fact, that the pangolins and as well as other species of mammals, they do host coronaviruses and other species of viruses. But it does not necessarily mean that these species of viruses emerge directly into humans, or that it can contaminate humans directly or any other species, because a lot of these viruses are host specific. So pangolin coronaviruses are only present in pangolins. They can't easily spill over into humans. However, there is no conclusive evidence that the COVID-19 pandemic was caused by the uh, from the pangolins as the intermediate host. This paper on the left says there's no evidence of coronaviruses or other potentially zoonotic viruses in the Malayan pangolins entering the wildlife trade via Malaysia. Now, this is interesting because the other three studies which did show that coronaviruses are there in pangolins, they were done in China, and they were done on pangolins which were seized from international wildlife trade. Whereas the first study on the left, this was done on native wild pangolins in Malaysia itself. So those wild native pangolins, they didn't have any coronaviruses there. But the ones that were traded internationally in illegal wildlife trade, they did have. That means that the pangolins in the wild probably do not host that many species of infectious viruses, but that during wildlife trade, because they've been kept with other animals, and this contamination they are picking up. So it is actually wildlife trade that is responsible for the emergence of novel pathogens like the coronavirus. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our study in the Eastern Ghats and what we found. So the Eastern Ghats is a 1,600 kilometer long hill chain. It's distributed across the eastern, parallel to the east coast of India. It's among the oldest geological formations in the world. It dates back, the rock formations underlying the Eastern Ghats have been dated back to about 3.5 billion years old. It supports diverse flora and fauna, including several rare, endemic and threatened species, particularly reptiles. In fact, two species of reptiles which have been rediscovered in the past decade have been reported to be endemic to the Eastern Ghats. The Jaipur ground gecko and the golden gecko. There are also several different tribal communities, indigenous tribal communities, which are present in the Eastern Ghats, and they are the majority. They are the predominant group which inhabits the Eastern Ghats. These communities include the Koyas, the Kondareddis, Nayakods, Konds, Savaras, and Gadwas. And I'm talking specifically more about the northern section of the Eastern Ghats here, which is this section. So this section is the northern Eastern Ghats. It is present in Andhra and Orissa mostly, as well as a bit of Telangana and Chhattisgarh, and it covers an area of greater than 20,000 square kilometers. So it's quite a vast stretch of forest in the Eastern Ghats. However, this area is important because despite having a very large forest area, the protected area coverage of the northern Eastern Ghats is very low. It's in fact the lowest in India, probably the lowest in the whole of South Asia as well. Only 3.5% of the northern Eastern Ghats is protected under protected areas. The rest is mostly in plantations, in reserve forests, in community-owned forests, etc. So this is the reason we wanted to study the pangolin presence in this landscape, because it's quite a large landscape of forest, the Eastern Ghats landscape. So just to show you where we did most of our work, like I showed you in the previous slide, this is the Eastern Ghats landscape in which we focused most of our work on pangolins. This is the landscape. This is state called Andhra Pradesh. This is Telangana. This is Odisha, and this is Chhattisgarh. So our field area was basically virtually at the border of these four states, in fact. But we focused most of our work in Papikonda National Park, which is the only national park in the northern section of the Eastern Ghats in Andhra, and the buffer of the park. So this is the location in India for those few who are from abroad. So just to show you what the landscape of the northern Eastern Ghats looks like, it's a very diverse landscape. It starts from dry deciduous forests at the in the lower elevation. So the elevation goes from about 20 meters at the base of the Godavari River. This is the Godavari River flowing through the landscape. It starts from about 20 meters and it goes to about almost 1700 meters is the highest point in the Eastern Ghats. In this elevation gradient, it goes through a gradient of forest types. So it starts from scrub and dry deciduous forest, this moist deciduous forest in the mid elevation, starting from about 400 meters right up to about 900 to 1000 meters. And in the highest elevation regions, you see quite a bit of evergreen forest, semi-evergreen to evergreen forest. There's also a lot of landscape transformation that's happening in the Eastern Ghats. There's a lot of roads which are being built. Roads are being widened, in fact, rather not being built. A couple of new dams have come up in the last 5 years itself during my PhD work. There's also lift irrigation that's happening, so pipelines are being laid for lift irrigation projects. And there's a lot of forest conversion for plantations. So this is in fact the major driver of forest change in the Eastern Ghats. So during our study, this is how we did it. We graded the landscape. So this is standard protocol for normal surveys. You have to grade it because if you want to look at occupancy at a unit level, you need to have grids. And then we surveyed about roughly about 58 grids. Yes, about 58 grids we surveyed in the northern Eastern Ghats. So in total, we surveyed about 600 square kilometers, you can say. So what did we find out about pangolins? So just to give you an idea of how rare pangolins are, we've been surveying for pangolins for the past 3 years, from 2017 onwards, which is when we started working on pangolins, for 3 years. And we only camera trapped pangolin once in this entire time period. So you can imagine how rare pangolins are. But we did find out what kind of landscape they live in, what kind of habitats they live in. So they do live in a variety of habitats, but they prefer steep slopes and dense vegetation, patches with dense vegetation. So you can see that they prefer to burrow near boulders, which have multiple entrances, so that if some predator is trying to attack them, they can enter through one burrow and then exit through another exit. So they do seem to prefer areas which are steep slightly, which makes it difficult for predators to chase them up. And then also they prefer to burrow in large boulders. They make, in fact, burrows next to boulders like this. Yeah, this is the kind of burrows that they are supposed to inhabit. We did find mud being scraped away, and you will see claw marks. So you may also see scat droppings of the pangolin there. So we also did, in addition to our study in the Eastern Ghats, we also did a survey of pangolin distribution across India. So we did an online survey, and we asked people to report where they sighted pangolin directly. So we kept this survey open from 2018 to 2019, one and a half year period. And about 125 people responded, but in those 125 people, only about 30 people had seen pangolin directly. But you can see that it is distributed across India. So that's another special thing about pangolin, because it is not restricted by habitat. It can live in a variety of habitats. It is even lives next to villages, in fact. And it lives in close to water bodies, scrub forest, cropland, farmland, even evergreen forest. It's been found in KMTR in higher elevations also, about 1500 meters. Even in the Eastern Ghats landscape, it's been reported in the highest parts of the Eastern Ghats, which is above 1500, going out almost 1700 meters. So habitat loss is not a major threat for pangolins, I should conclude. So the main threat to pangolins is, in fact, from almost entirely, I can say, from hunting and wildlife trade. So in this survey, we also asked people to report what kind of habitat they saw the pangolin in. So this will give you an idea of that they are very diverse, that they are not restricted by habitat. So 32.6% said they prefer dry deciduous forests. About 13% said they preferred moist deciduous forest. About 11% said they preferred the evergreen forest. And slightly lesser percentage said they live in scrub forest. So forest is still the major habitat for pangolins, but they are also reported near villages across India. So they are very adaptable in that sense. The only problem with pangolins is that they cannot defend themselves. So in fact, I'll show you that a bit later. So we studied, in our study in the Eastern Ghats, we were trying to survey how hunting of pangolins is done. So this is pangolin which is holed up. This was in fact a pangolin that we helped to rescue and release in Papikonda. So that is what it does. So once it is attacked, it will simply roll up into a ball. It doesn't run away, it doesn't try to bite you, it doesn't try to chase you. It can't attack you. It doesn't have teeth. It's got no defense of its own except to defend against, to roll up into a ball like that. But that kind of a defense only works against predators like carnivores. It doesn't work against humans. So it's very easy for humans to, once they find the pangolin, even if they hit it with a stone, it will roll up like this into a ball. And then they simply pick it up and then they put into a bag and then take it away. So it's the easiest animal to hunt. So we did see that the hunting activity, it peaks in the monsoon and the winter. Hunting does peak in the monsoon, but we did see, we've been also monitoring trade in pangolins at national level past a couple of years. And we saw that a lot of reports of pangolin trade, in fact, happen in the winter. So monsoon and winter are the peak time for pangolin hunting. The meat is consumed immediately. Well, earlier the meat was consumed immediately. Now the meat is not being consumed immediately. Now that people are aware that the pangolin has huge demand in the international market as well as domestic market. So now they prefer to keep it alive and they prefer to sell the whole animal. So earlier the meat was consumed and the scales were sold at huge prices. So kilo of scales would go up to almost 30,000, 20,000 rupees. This I'm talking about the Eastern Ghats, but the rates do vary a little bit in the country. So scales are used as a defense against black magic. That is what people who hunt the pangolins, they say that jadoo, kala jadoo, or black magic. So there is a belief about black magic that exists in several parts of India. So people who consume them, they believe that the scales can defend them against the black magic or kala jadoo. Also, people report that the scales are useful for the treatment of piles as well as other diseases. So from our surveys in the Eastern Ghats, we have not found that much of evidence of smuggling or trade that happens abroad from pangolins which are hunted in India. So most of the pangolins that are hunted in India are, in fact, we feel that they're consumed locally itself. So the trade is mostly domestic within India, in fact. So this you can see the scale of the pangolin hunted. We found several scales. So we found about 10 to 15 scales we must have found during our service. So that means that people do still keep finding pangolins and hunting them, but it has come down a lot in number. So what they do is they usually sell the pangolin and they sell the scales, but they keep one scale for themselves. Because they believe that it will help them defend against black magic. So we also surveyed the different methods that people use for hunting pangolins. This is from our interviews in the landscape. We did about 80 interviews with people who had hunted pangolins previously. And most of them said that they have to dig the burrow. They have to find the burrow first of the pangolin. And then they dig the burrow and then they try to pull the pangolin out. In fact, we have seen this also. We have seen people sharing videos of them digging out the pangolin, the burrow, and then they pull the animal out from there. People also said they use bow and arrow, but this may not be very effective at killing it because the scales are impenetrable and arrows can't pierce the scales. The scales are very hard. So probably what this does is it makes the animal into a defensive posture. That makes it easier for people to pick it up. They also said that they have to track the pangolin because when the pangolin moves, you can see the tail mark. So they identify that and they track it to the burrow of the animal. They also use dogs for this purpose. And then about 20% said that they have to wait at the burrow till the animal comes out. So when the animal comes out, they hit it with the stick. And then once they hit the animal with the stick, it doesn't do anything to it, but again the animal goes into that ball. Then it becomes very easy to pick up. Use of dogs is very, very essential. Be it pangolin or any animal. Across central India and Eastern Ghats, dogs are very, very ubiquitous. You will see people hunting with dogs all the time. Some people also said that they set fire to burrow. So when they set fire to the burrow, the animal comes out from another entrance, or it tries to come out of this entrance itself. So then it becomes very easy to pick it up. I wanted to show you some photos of how hunting is done of pangolins. So these are the kind of bows and arrows that people use in the Eastern Ghats landscape. So they have different arrows for different purposes. So this the middle one is for animals like wild boar, barking deer, hares, etc. The left side arrow, that is for killing birds at night. So what they do is those small arrow-like shapes that you can see, that goes and strikes the bird and it stays there on the branch for the night. So the bird can't move. So they come in the morning and they pick it up. And then the right side arrow is for shooting birds in the daytime. So this is enough to stun the bird and it falls away. So then it becomes easy to pick up. People also use these are jaw traps. So they use these for smaller animals like small hares, some rodents, shrews, etc. These are wire traps. They set these for larger animals. Even pangolins can be caught like this. But these are normally for larger animals like wild boar, barking deer, etc. So the right side photo, you can see people with guns also. Guns are very rare in the landscape that we work in Eastern Ghats at least, but they are used in fact. So you do find people with guns, but very, very rarely. It's not a very common this one, because one thing is it's also a insurgency hit landscape because of the Naxalite problem and all. So guns have been taken away a long time back, but occasionally these two are from our camera traps during our surveys. So this is a dead langur that person is taking. Some other methods which people use for hunting. These are different kinds of bows and arrows, like I showed you. This will be the metal head. This is the bamboo head. This is a catapult or guler, it's called in Hindi. People use these closer to villages if they have to hit birds, etc. Now this is how pangolins are traded usually. So once people find them, the animal doesn't do anything at all. So it's very easy to do anything with it. So they weigh it. After weighing it, they measure the animal, and then they place this paper with the price that they're asking for the animal on it. So all of this is recorded and it's sent on WhatsApp to the potential buyers and middlemen, etc. So most of this trade happens on WhatsApp and via phone. So the buyers don't actually come to see the animal. It all happens mostly on the phone. So, but the people who hunt them, they make videos and they circulate on the on WhatsApp. Or nowadays, it's happening also occasionally on the internet. You find a couple of Facebook groups, and then it happens on the internet also. So it is moving away now from local level, grassroots level scale trade to more of a WhatsApp facilitated trade, you can say. This is what medicinal value. So it's the same material that is present in our fingernails and our hair. So all mammals have the same material, keratin. So it's got no medicinal value. It can't do anything. It can't cure anything at all. So this is only a false belief which is there among people that it's got some kind of a medicinal value. So people in across India, in fact, parts of across India, because we have seen this, we have heard these reports across India. They make rings out of the pangolin scales like this. You can see the ring, and then they wear the ring on the finger. You can in fact still see that. They feel that this ring will protect them from any black magic or anything that happens. I wanted to show you some other animals which are also hunted in the Eastern Ghats landscape. This is a leopard cat. This is a vulnerable species. This was a gaur which was killed in 2017, I think. These are giant squirrels which are hung out to dry outside a house. And this is a wild boar. During our surveys for the pangolin, we didn't find pangolin. We only found it once, unfortunately. But we did find a number of other animals. This is sloth bear. It's a mother and 2 cubs. This is a wild dog. Wild dogs are also found in the Eastern Ghats. Leopard, but only half the leopard you can see here. And this is a small Indian civet. So while we were camera trapping for the pangolins, we in fact found pretty much every other animal in the landscape. except we didn't find good image of pangolin. This is a barking deer. It's the most common animal in the Eastern Ghats. This is sambar. This is a 400 antelope. This is a wild boar, Indian wild boar. So during the past 3 years, in addition to our surveys in the Eastern Ghats, we have been also monitoring pan-India level trade that's happening in pangolins. We've been doing surveys for it, online surveys, and we've also been monitoring the reports in the media, in the print media. So in fact, from the past 3 years, me and our colleagues, we've been doing a study recently on pangolin trade at the national level. We recorded about 105, 106 cases of pangolin trade reported in English media, English and other regional language media also, from 2018 onwards, in these 3 years. So what we see is that there's quite an increasing spike in pangolin. It's been increasing year on year. Since the pandemic started the COVID pandemic started and the lockdown began in March, there's been a sudden spike in pangolin hunting and trade across India. So there's been almost, I can say, 3 to 4 times increase in pangolin seizures compared to 2018 and 2019. So for example, this map you can see, we have mapped the pangolin seizures across India. The yellow marks are the ones from 2018. There are only about 8 instances of pangolin seizures in 2018 during these 4-5 months. March, April, May, June, July, and August, 6 months. In 2019, there were about 10 cases reported of pangolin seizures during this time. But in 2020, this year, there have been 25 cases of pangolin seizures. You can see this 3 to 4 times increase compared to 2018. And almost 3 times, 2.5 times increase compared to 2019. So this 6 months has witnessed a very sudden spike in pangolin seizures. Now, the reasons for that, there could be many. One thing is that probably that people in forest dwelling regions across India, they're having loss of livelihoods. So then they try to hunt the pangolins for food or for some kind of income. Another reason we think is that there's increased vigilance and monitoring now, because during especially March, April, May, and June, there was complete lockdown. So even forest department was more active at that time, we feel. So it's probably the case that there's increased vigilance. It could be multiple factors, but the end result is that there's been a sudden spike in number of pangolin seizures across India. So this is some of the news releases that you can see. All of these have happened in the past 3 to 4 months, June, July, August. So, and they are happening across India. You can see teacher mastermind behind pangolin racket. That is in Athgad in Odisha, very close to Cuttack. This is also in Cuttack. This was a rare pangolin smuggled from smugglers in Gariaband in Chhattisgarh. And they're even happening in, they're in fact even happening in tiger reserves. This is Pench Tiger Reserve in Maharashtra. So pangolin was poached in Pench and the poachers were arrested. And this was, the bottom image is pangolin and the cub. So this is what cub of the pangolin looks like. It only gives birth to about 1, very rarely 2, but usually only 1 young every year. And the young, it climbs on the animal's back, the tail. And so basically the mother carries the cub on the tail. So this was in Maharashtra, Nanded division. In our area also, in the Eastern Ghats, Andhra, Telangana also, there's been a sudden spike in pangolin seizures past 3 months. So there was a pangolin poaching racket which was busted in Kottagadam Bhadrachalam area, which is very close to our field area. It also happened, I suppose this right side image is from Guntur in Andhra, very close to Vijayawada. And the bottom report is from Asfabad district in northern Telangana. This also happened in August. So these 3 cases have happened in August. And this is the trend across India. They're being reported from, there's no particular hotspot as such, but wherever forests are there, wherever, there is some habitat for pangolins, they are present there and they're being increasingly hunted during this during this time. In fact, we found about in our online survey, which I told you about, we found pangolin reports from 16 states. Pangolins being present and being seized. And it's also happening at an international scale. So the top two images that you can see, these are pangolin scales. This was quite a big seizure. This was in Karnataka, in Chitradurga and Ballari district. I suppose this happened last month, where about, I think, 6 to 10 kgs of pangolin scales were seized from people. However, this is hardly anything which happens compared to what happens at an international level. So if you can see, these two, the bottom images are tons and tons of pangolin scales, pangolins and pangolin scales being seized. The right side image was 9 tons of pangolin scales being seized in Hong Kong port. This was in 2018, I think. And I think the previous year or the subsequent year on the left side, you can see these are frozen pangolins and pangolin fetuses, so the young pangolins also. So I don't know how many, but I think about 10 tons or something like that was seized in Singapore port. So all of these pangolins are originating from Africa, so the African pangolins mostly, and they are bound for East Asia. Particularly, they're bound for China and Vietnam, and that is where a lot of international trade in wildlife trade in pangolins is headed for. So just to conclude, pangolin numbers have plummeted to extremely low numbers. Sightings are extremely rare due to hunting and trade. So you can go and look for pangolins for days and days together, and it's very, very difficult to see pangolins in the wild now. And if you do end up sighting a pangolin, it is extremely lucky. But people do still keep seeing them, and that's how the hunting is happening. There's a significant decline in populations in the past 2 decades. Whatever hunting of pangolins is happening is mostly opportunistic. So people also don't go out and actively look for them. It's very hard to find pangolins like that. What they do is they mostly, it's all opportunistic. So they go into the forest, and if they find a pangolin, they catch it. And nowadays they hardly eat it. They bring it back and then they try to sell it. The international and domestic trade, stopping this international domestic trade in pangolins is very, very key to conserving pangolins. Yes. So that's about it. I also wanted to show a couple of the articles that we have been writing about pangolins. We've been writing a few in Telugu also, as well as several articles in English, in Scroll and a few other popular science outlets, Mongabay, and then Wire also we've written. And our paper is coming out next month in Oryx. Yes. I'd like to thank our organization, Ashoka Trust for Research and Ecology, as well as our funders, the Rufford Foundation and the MBZ Species Conservation Fund, which made possible this work that we've been doing. They've been given camera traps, they've been supporting us financially, and that's how this work has been possible. Also, the Andhra Pradesh Forest Department, our field, several people have helped us in the field, our field assistant Arvind Ram and Naveen, as well as Hussein, Rashid, Bharat, Amir, Rohit, Krishna, Prashant, and also the people who have been sharing their knowledge about pangolins, the people who are of the Northern Eastern Ghats, from whom we learned everything we know about pangolins. Like I said before, we only got the pangolin image once, and we handled it a couple of times. That was a rescued pangolin. But literally everything else that we know about pangolin is from the local communities. They've been very generous in telling us what they know. I'd also like to thank our camera trap suppliers, Reap Bangalore and IdeaWide, as well as the Kaya people for their support. Thank you.